Aloha and welcome to this final practice WOD in the UI Basics module. This WOD, in this WOD what we're going to be doing is making a few more changes to the layout. We're going to be creating a simple little nav bar and a 3-column display. I want to hasten to add that this is purely pedagogical, just so that you have more chances to kind of fiddle around with things. I'm not too concerned about whether or not you can create the layout exactly the way I have it or not, because we're definitely not going to have you rolling nav bars and multi-column pages from scratch using raw CSS. That's just crazy. Instead, what we're going to do is you're going to be using a CSS framework, in this case, in this class, Twitter Bootstrap, that provides lots of very, very nicely crafted grid systems for creating columns of various types and nav bars and that are responsive and all sorts of great stuff. So this is just kind of for fun, to kind of exercise your understanding of CSS and so forth. And so don't take the layouting aspect of it too seriously. But I do think that it's important to kind of understand how to define classes and override capabilities and so forth. That'll come in handy, even if the specifics of this this particular page layout stuff it isn't. Okay. All right. So one of the things is, prior to starting this WOD, we have to merge the CSS branch from BrowserHistory3 back into master. That's so that for every WOD we can start from master, and since we're building off the previous one, we have to do that. Now I'd already kind of partially did it, unfortunately, when I got interrupted. And so the way you would do it is you take CSS1 and you put it into master. Just try it, see what the heck happens. Oh, there were some untracked changes. So first, okay. Just because of the way things are. What you would do in general is you would take your two branches, after you've committed your change to master, you would do this step to merge them. I've already done that merge, and then you go back to changes and you have to commit this, this particular merge. So we'll do the commit in sync, and that will actually finish off the merge, as well as push it up to GitHub so that we have a record of that, which is a nice thing. And once again, I've forgotten to start the timer. So sorry about that. We'll add a minute or something just to take care of that. Okay, so now we've got, we've committed our changes, and the current branch is now master. And so what we want to do now is we want to create a new branch to hold the work for this, called columns 1. So let's do the branch. Okay, and so now that's the current, we're going to switch to that branch. Okay, and if you're using live reload, enable it for this folder. So just to check to make sure everything's okay, we can try, what can we do? We can try a history of browsers test, and there we can see that changing the index.html results in an immediate change there, and we can also, let's say, change the color to red, and we can see everything turns to red. So what was it, dark blue? I think so, yeah. Okay, so that just makes sure that live reload is working both when we make changes to the index.html and style.css. Okay, so we want to have the introduction section remain full width, but we want to have these 3 columns. And how do we do that? And the way that you can do that is to wrap these 3 sections in a in a div tag, sorry. Okay, so we're going to surround with div, and we're going to say class equals dot left. Okay, so you can see there's the doggone it. There's the h2 with the div around it. Okay, the div, and then let's put another space in here, just so you can see better. And so we'll take this h2 and we'll say propeller shift J, surround with tag div, and then class equals dot right. Sorry, class equals right. Forgetting my syntax. So we'll have a class called left, a class called right, and then for this final, we will wrap it in a div, and the class will be center. Okay, and how do we define those? What we'll do is we'll define the class called left. Okay, so you can see when we have a dot as the start of the keyword, that means that we're defining a class. When we don't have the dot, that means we're defining an HTML tag. So that's how we distinguish that's how CSS distinguishes between the two. So for left, we'll say that we're going to float left, and we'll have a width of 300 pixels, because that's what the specifications are. And then for the class called right, we'll have a float right and also a width of 300 pixels. And then the center class, what we're going to basically do is we're going to create a margin left of 300 pixels and a margin right also of 300 pixels. And that kind of squishes it into between the the left and right columns. So if we save this stuff out, what we can see is we've got kind of our three columns more or less, but we do notice that they're not exactly at the right. They're kind of off. The middle one's offset from each other. So let's do a little inspect element here, and if we look at it, what we can see is the padding for this div left is a little bit different. There's the div right, and there's the div center. So it looks like what we need to do is actually P300, P363. Yeah, see how that one has this H2 has a little bit more padding than the other. So let's try a padding of just a little bit for each of them to make the padding uniform. And if we save that out, and you can see now they all look much better. So there's that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's our three columns, and they look pretty good. And again, I give you this assignment more as a or if you just kind of fiddle around and learn, don't get super frustrated with this stuff. And certainly there are other ways you can create this multi-column thing, but hopefully it's kind of, an interesting exercise to try to figure out how to do it. The next thing that we want to do is to remove the table of contents header and instead style the section links in a simple horizontal bar. Okay, so to do that, we get rid of table of contents. Okay, so now it looks like oops, let me just move this guy down. Okay, because we're just going to be looking at this top part now. Okay, and then the next thing we want to do is we're going to we want to first of all get rid of these dots here, and actually before we do that, what we want to do is let's embed this in a div tag, and we'll have an ID just for fun. ID equals navbar. Okay, and once we've done that, now we can start changing just the contents within that. And the way that we do that, if we have an ID, is we'll say pound navbar UL, and then the first thing we can do is say list style type none, and if we save that out, what we can see is we've got rid of those dots. So if you kind of look at the UL styling, you find out that this list style type tells you what the what happens, how to style the list. Okay, so we got rid of the dots that way. And then we also have some margin and some padding associated with the list type. So let's get rid of that, and now they're all, they're kind of flush. So that's pretty good. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to change the way the list item in our nav bar is displayed. And to do that, we can say inline. If we save that out, you can see, okay, that's cool. Now they're not in a column. They're just they're next to each other. And then the final thing we want to do is kind of spread them out. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it. The way, one way that works is to basically say, okay, if we've got the links inside this nav bar, then we can say margin left 75 pixels and margin right 75 pixels. And if we do that, they kind of get spread out. Now I just want to note that the reason why we actually embedded this list inside this div is because now we can say only change the links that are within this div to have that margin left and margin right. If you just change the A link without this navbar, what would happen is when we had these other links down here like NCSA, they would all of a sudden be spread out, and that wouldn't look good. And you can see in here that here's a link and it doesn't have this margin left and margin right of 75 pixels. So creating this nav bar with this ID is basically just a way that we can isolate the changes that we want to make to just one specific section of the page. Okay, now we're supposed to commit our branch to GitHub, so let's bring back our thing and go back to here, and we're going to say finished BrowserHistory3. We'll do commit and sync. And a little bit of waiting. So waiting for this. Okay, so we're done at about 11:40. So we'll say this is a 12-minute WOD. And again, as I say, be sure to record your times so that if you when you write your technical essay, you can refer to it, and if you do it multiple times, you can remember what you got for each of them. Since we're doing, this is the only time I'm going to do this WOD, so I might as well show you. I've got the columns 1. I'll put that to here. And then I'll say I want this to go into master. Okay, so I've got 1 commit. I'm going to merge into master, so I say merge branches. Okay, so that's all done, and then I go to changes. Actually, there's no changes here because I'm not in master. So then I want to select master. So switch to this branch. Okay, and then if I go to changes, you can see I've got some unsynced commits to merge the branches. So I'm going to say merged browser history 3 WOD into master. And then we'll commit and sync. And okay, so it's all done. Everything is committed and synced. And then we can review browser history on GitHub, which is kind of an interesting thing to do. Okay, and if we look at branches, you can kind of see how the branches that were created and what happened to them. We're doing this to try all branches. Okay, so that's the browser history WODs. You can see we've now got a variety of branches, but this is the most recent one containing all of our changes ready for any future extensions that we'd want to make.